Hello, Black Eagles. Welcome back to the Black Eagles YouTube channel. I'm back here with another video for you on one of our new signings, João Mario from Benfica. And here to talk to us about João is Adrian Sousa from Rabona TV. He has some new videos coming out soon on Victor Osimhen and his fall from grace almost, or his deteriorated relationship, I should say, with Napoli, and how he is now ultimately ending up at Galatasaray. And he has a video up at the moment as well on João Cancelo and why he left Europe. Adrian, thank you very much for joining me, and it's a pleasure to speak to you. Of course, I've been watching your videos for a long time, and I highly recommend our viewers, if they aren't already, to go and check out your channel.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. It's great to finally jump on here. We'd been talking for a while. It was will it happen, will it not happen with Joo Mario, whether he would go to Beşiktaş, and it looks like it's now. It's gonna happen. So, yeah, it's great to be able to chat with you, and also it's great to see a nice little Benfica contingent doing well at Beşiktaş and growing. It seems.
For sure, yeah, we've got 3 of your ex-players now already, with Jetson, of course, and Rafa. And now João Mario as well. So it's definitely a contingent that's growing. And the Portuguese influence, of course, over the years has always kind of been prevalent at Beşiktaş. We had another former player of yours, João Sabrosa, back in the day. And I don't remember if Hugo Almeida ever played for you. I don't think so, right? He was from Porto, but I don't think he ever played for Benfica. But yeah, you're of course, other than a football romantic and somebody who loves to make long exposés on anything concerning European football. You are also a Benfica fan, something I actually didn't know before we met a while back. And yeah, you've been a Benfica fan for a long time, I imagine. So you're the perfect guy to talk to when it comes to João Mario, who has been playing for you guys for, how long has it been now? 4 years?
I think, yeah. So he came the season prior to Roger Schmidt. So he came in the 21-22 season, I believe.
Yeah.
And 2021, I think, is when he arrived. But I mean, the last few years are all sort of muddied up in my brain. I have difficulty separating them sometimes. But yeah, he came when Jorge Jesus was still the manager of Benfica. So that must have been 21-22.
Another old familiar face for us Turkish football fans, of course, as he was the coach of Fenerbahce. Is it now 2 years ago, I guess? And yeah, now, of course, very successful with Al Hilal in the Saudi Pro League. But João Mario, of course, a former player of your local rival Sporting. I think he came up in the youth ranks there. Is that right? Because I heard a Turkish journalist say earlier he was from Porto's youth, and I thought to myself, that doesn't sound right. Pretty sure he's from Sporting.
Yeah, so I think he started in Porto, but then where he actually sort of arrived on the scene and started to get a lot more notoriety was with Sporting. And that's when he started to get a lot of opportunities with the youth teams for Portugal, and really his career started to take off at Sporting. So whenever people think of him, they think of him at Sporting as a young player, as a young guy. But it is true that he started out in Porto as well.
Okay, so for those of you who remember, we actually played Sporting in 2015. And he was on their team at the time. And then, of course, he made a big move to Inter. I spoke to a good friend of mine recently who's a big Inter fan as well. And I asked him, what did you think of João Mario at Inter? And he said, the biggest money flop ever. And I was like, oh, that's not very positive. But he has been more successful at Benfica, I think we can say. He won the 2022-23 championship with you guys, I believe.
Yes, that's right. That's right. And it's funny you mentioned that, because I have another friend who's an Inter supporter as well. And they all have that exact same thoughts about him. And one of the things that's actually sort of pertinent to speaking about João Mario in general, I think that a lot of times he was not so much struggling. I mean, he still went to West Ham. He went to Inter. He went to Russia for a little bit. He played for top teams in Portugal. Not exactly a guy who's playing in the 3rd division or something. But I think what happened with him was when he was young, he was always a winger. I always remembered him as a winger. But then when he went to Inter, it seemed like they noticed that he has these abilities, this skill set that would lend themselves really well to a central midfielder, someone who can collect the ball, can keep that close control, he's very difficult to get off the ball when you're in tight spaces with him, and then can distribute it well also. So all of a sudden, he was getting played more and more and more in this central midfield position when João Mario himself has even said that Roger Schmidt is one of the first managers that he's had that's actually played him in his correct position, which is sort of wide on the right. Now, that did kind of change, which we'll get into later. But yeah, I think that's why João Mario had this sort of weird reputation prior, almost seen as like one of those next best things, almost like a wonder kid that flopped for some time because of that change to playing centrally, sometimes as a defensive midfielder even. So I think that explains a lot of sort of the frustrations that some of his previous club's supporters have surrounding him.
Yeah, and it actually ties in really well to a question that one of the Redditors, the people on Reddit, on the Beşiktaş Reddit subreddit, asked. And his question was, what is his most comfortable position? And in his eyes, I guess that's then on the wing. In your eyes, I know it's a little differently.
Yeah, so I think that my brain has been influenced a little bit by what sort of happened at Benfica with Roger Schmidt lately, because we had a great first season with Roger Schmidt where it was incredible. João Mario was super influential on the success of that season, playing on the right wing, or sometimes on the left. It depends. He can do either, but mostly on the right is where he was most dominant. And he did really, really well there. Sort of that, as you and I spoke of, that playmaker from the wing, someone who can cut inside and really dictate play. Not necessarily a winger, because when people think of a winger, they think of someone who's rapid, who's going to be doing stepovers and blowing past defenders. Not so much that kind of winger, more close control. Again, like I said, more a skill set of a central midfielder, but playing in a wide position. And that's where he had that incredible season under Roger Schmidt, where he scored 23 goals, got 15 assists in, I think it was like 50 or 51 appearances. So, I mean, 38 goal contributions, that's excellent. It was his best season by far. He scored more goals in that season than he did across his entire career, I think. I think he doubled his goals total. But then what happened at Benfica, which is why there's all this confusion, the next season we bring in Di Maria. Now, Di Maria, of course, is going to play on that right wing every single time. As well, we also started having these injuries and all these other sorts of things that just weren't working. And João Mario became this guy that Roger Schmidt was playing on the left. Then he'll play him at central midfield. Then he'll play him tucked behind the striker. At one point, I remember, I think it was in a Champions League match, but I'm not 100% positive on that. But I remember that in the second half, he had him playing defensive midfielder because I guess he wanted him on the ball, dictating play, sort of being like a deep lying playmaker. So there's all of this mystery about where he should really play, which is just sort of influenced by the strange set of circumstances that was at Benfica last season, where we were struggling and everyone was getting scrambled all over the place, as well as his earlier career when he was going from team to team to team across Europe, where he was played centrally a lot. But long-winded answer, he's best sort of playing in those wider positions. That's for sure. Okay,
that's actually great, because coming out of our conversation over WhatsApp, I was a little iffy on whether he would be a good fit for us, because for months now, I think my co-host and I have been saying the thing we lack still is a creative winger, because we had Rachid Ghazal over the last couple of years, but he has had so many injuries. His contract ended this summer and he left. He still had the great ending at the club, winning the cup and stuff like that, but really he played a massive role in our championship season, our last championship in 2021. But he left a void, and he had actually filled up the void that Quaresma had left before him, because Quaresma was very much our playmaker on the wing back in the mid-2010s to the late 2010s. And then Ghezal kind of came in, and he was the first winger that could almost make you forget about Quaresma. Not really, but you know what I mean. Like, he was a rightful successor. And now we have a different type of winger there. More with Rasicka, we have somebody he's relatively quick, he's relatively skilled, he's like average at everything, I'd say. He's not super fast, he's not super good at beating his man, he's not got a super good shot, he's not got a super good pass or cross in him, so he's a little, he can do everything, but not, how did they say that? master of none. There's this saying that goes like
Yeah,
that,
a jack of all trades and a master of none.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what Rashica is. He defends really well, tracks back a lot, presses really well, and all that kind of stuff. But he's not exceptional at anything. And really, with Rafa, he's right now our main creative source for sure. You know him better than I do. You know how he can create chaos with diving into pockets of space and just create confusion because they lose track of him so quickly. But also I showed you one of the assists he gave against Lugano, I think it was. Like he's been giving some amazing assists. He's been doing a lot of great stuff for us. So he's really the main guy right now. Ciro Immobile is of course also there, and he's definitely impressed with 7 goals in 6 games. But Rafa is already in no time at all the main man. But on the weekend, for example, on Sivasspor, what they did is they locked down the middle. They really overloaded the middle, and our wings are not that great, I would say. And it's not that they neutralized Rafa, but definitely made him less impactful, if that makes sense. And I think in that regard, if you have what we really do need is a creative winger. And what I'm hearing from you now is that at Benfica, at least 2 years ago, I suppose, or 1.5 years ago, that was something he stood out in. But I was thinking as well, when Di Maria came, I was thinking about that earlier as well. Like, I wonder if that has something to do with the fact that he isn't playing on the wing anymore. And it's nice to hear that you confirm that.
So yeah. Basically, when Di Maria came, it sort of became a situation where he was constantly playing on the right wing. So that means that João Mario could typically get his playing opportunities on the left. Mm-hmm. But we had a whole bunch of young wingers that were coming in, and just like a lot of the clubs, I wouldn't say we're in chaos right now, but it seems like we're having a lot of overhaul with our team. Like we just sent David Neres to Napoli for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And so João Mario sort of became this guy that was sort of placed anywhere on the pitch, and he started getting more opportunity centrally. I think I sent you that transfer marked image of all of the positions that he played in a single season, and I think the only thing he was missing was like center back, goalkeeper,
striker.
Yeah, exactly. He had been all over the pitch, and I mean, we may as well get into this because I'm sure you guys are aware there was almost like a frustration around João Mario amongst Benfica supporters.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about that before I came on, and I think that the reason for it comes down to the fact that he almost became the poster boy or the representation of the struggles that we are having overall, and sort of the Roger Schmidt's inability to mix things up when it came to the player personnel. Like there's another player who probably has a similar kind of positional map as João Mario named Frederic Orsnes on Benfica. He's a guy that's played at right back, at central midfield, at left wing, at center defensive mid, at center back at one point. He's been all over the place. And those two guys, as much as all of us love him, they just sort of got the brunt of our frustration because Roger Schmidt wasn't giving opportunities to other players that might be better suited. Instead of playing a natural winger on the left wing or a natural center attacking midfielder, he would just put João Mario there. He would sort of just fill him in anywhere. And I think that that's where a lot of sort of the frustration comes from, because other than that, he was a great servant. I mean, he was always available. He didn't have really any injury issues that I can think of. He was constantly available. He captained the team at times. He had that incredible season where we won the league, and he was massively influential for that. So it's a shame that there's sort of this sour note that he's leaving on, because it kind of skews overall all of the good that he did with the club in that big season.
Am I right in saying that Benfica fans are a little fickle?
I would say yes. They're I would say they're impatient. I remember when we signed Anatoly Trubin, the Ukrainian goalkeeper, great goalkeeper. I think he was at Shakhtar prior. And he was, he's a young keeper. He's one that's sort of been one to watch in the Champions League. He's a goalkeeper on the rise. He has a lot of potential. And as you know, goalkeepers usually don't hit their peak until a little bit later, because you make one mistake as a goalkeeper, it's drastic. So you don't really have that learning curve. And I remember he let in a goal or two in like one of our first games. And all of the people on Twitter were saying like, we miss Odysseus Vlachodimos, we miss Odie, like we were so wrong about Odie, Trubin is washed, like we're hopeless again.
Yeah.
So I would say that they are Benfica supporters, and I guess I'm guilty of this sometimes too. I would say that we're impatient.
It's easy to get caught up in that spiral when other people are going down.
Exactly. Exactly. Especially when Benfica sort of has this expectation of winning silverware every year. You know, we've been incredibly spoiled over the years, and less so in the 21st century because Porto's sort of taken over and they became the team that was winning all the time. We've had good years, yeah. We had great runs, yeah. But there's sort of this expectation to always win, and I think that affects sort of our expectations of the players. And as soon as we see that there might not be up to snuff in that moment, we begin to turn on them. And so you add that to the fact that João Mario had this sort of, let's call it favoritism when it came to Roger Schmidt. He got a lot of the brunt of the frustration of Benfica supporters.
Yeah, it sounds very recognizable with Turkish fans in general. And Beşiktaş fans, our fan base is also fickle. I would definitely say Galatasaray's fan base are extremely fickle. They're probably the worst of the bunch, but also because they have been the most successful over the last, since 1996, essentially. They've been the most successful Turkish club. There's no ifs or buts about that. And I think that also creates an atmosphere where fans are just, their expectation is just set really high. And yeah, like we were talking about it off air about Kerem Aktürkoğlu as well. Like I think he's been an incredibly valuable player for them over the years, but he gets the brunt of their frustration so often. And I think in part that's also because he's a local player. And I definitely think Turkish fans have this tendency to criticize the locals over the foreigners rather than, criticize who deserves to be criticized, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I definitely think for him, a change of scenery is gonna do him well. It's gonna do him a lot of good. But then at the same time, of course, the expectations in Benfica are extremely high as well. So he doesn't get a lot of time to settle in and all that. But he's definitely a player I think that you will enjoy. But yeah, it's always difficult. And why do you think that is that Roger Schmidt was so much of a fan of him? I know Roger Schmidt loves to play a very intense, high-pressing game. Would you say that João Mario is good at that? Is that something he does well, pressing?
I would say overall, yes. I wouldn't, when I think of people who are, like top pressers within the team, he's not someone that comes to mind first. Rafa was very good at it. Previously. That's something that we might be missing right now. But João Mario wasn't bad. I would say that he was a very hard worker, and that's probably went a long way in Roger Schmidt's eyes. And I think also beyond the pressing, technically, he was one of the best players at Benfica. He was so good in transition in that he could be the first out ball, he could collect, he could hold it up and, hold off 2-3 players. The amount of times that I've seen João Mario surrounded by 2 or 3 guys, and like I said, he's not flashy, but the way he just controls the ball, keeps it close, turns away from them, he can get out of tight little corners. So he was almost press resistant in that way, and he could set up our counterattacks very quickly. That's why he and Rafa had such a great understanding of each other. They were so good at sort of being that quick out ball for Benfica to transition from defense to attack. So I think that Roger Schmidt really liked all of those technical attributes that he had, the close control, the passing ability, the vision, and the fact that he could also get on the end of a lot of attacks. We would see that in the 22-23 season, 22-23. I actually saw it in some of the highlights that you showed here. There's all these moments where Benfica would attack rapidly, and then João Mario would be the guy who's arriving a little bit later for a cutback in the box. He was that player as well. So he would be at the end of the attacks also. So all of these things put together, you can see why a manager would like him. He's very... has vast experience. He's a more mature player. He's played in a lot of leagues. He's very technically proficient. And it seems like he's a hard worker. Clearly, I mean, he's doing something right that the manager loved him so much.
Yeah, I mean, if a guy like Roger Schmidt likes you, then you definitely have to be a hard worker because he has very high standards for his players when it comes to intensity and all that kind of stuff. I remember that from his time at PSV. There's a couple of more specific questions that I also have from some of our viewers. And the first one is, would you describe him as a creative player?
Yeah, for sure. I would definitely say that he's a creative player. He's someone that is always looking to combine with the other attackers around the box. Like, that's something that when João Mario was at his best and when we were playing with all players in their natural positions and not having him moved all over the pitch, that was what I loved watching in that first season under Roger Schmidt, because when he was playing on the left, he could combine with Grimaldo making overlapping runs from the fullback position. He would have Rafa coming in from the center. They would all combine, give and go, technically very proficient once again. And he was often the one that was sort of pulling the strings. So yeah, absolutely, he's a creative player. He's not a simpleton, to put it bluntly. He's very much an intelligent player that can adapt to different coaches' approaches. Accidental rhyme.
Yeah, you already described it. You already kind of answered this one, but I'm going to ask it anyway because it was a viewer question, and it's, how good is he at dribbling? It's a very basic question, but
yeah. So again, he's not the kind of dribbler that is going to cause a lot of fear to fullbacks if you see him running at you in open space. Yes, he can beat a defender one-on-one, that's for sure. But I look at him more as the kind of dribbler who, if he has the ball at the byline, he'll be able to sort of wriggle his way through a couple of defenders, that kind of thing. He's not going to be taking on an entire team and going on a slaloming run or something like that. But in tight spaces, he can definitely get himself out of trouble. So I would say that he's pretty good on the ball.
When you were describing him earlier in those situations, surrounded by a couple of players under pressure, the player that instantly came to mind for me, and somebody you'll be familiar with as well, was Manuel Fernandes. When he played for Beşiktaş, he was like, he could get out from anything, it felt like. Is there any similarities there perhaps that you could point to? Or
so when he was at Benfica, I was a little bit young still, and also in Canada, it's a lot harder to find matches, so it was difficult for me at that time to watch Benfica regularly. But I couldn't say for sure. I mean, I'll ask you that same question maybe in a year from now.
For sure. I mean, Fernandes was obviously I think he was pretty small. João Mario strikes me as a taller guy. He's only like 1.80 m, I think, or something like that. But
yeah, he's not tiny, that's for sure. He's not a big physical guy that's gonna be a Hulk and bust through defenders. But he is strong on the ball. That is one that sort of goes with that close control. Like, he's the kind of guy where you can pass him the ball, he can lean on a defender and then spin him, type of thing. That kind of dribbling.
What about his speed? Because it's also another question I got from one of our viewers. Is he fast? Is he slow? Is he mediocre? What can we expect?
He's not as fast as Rafa, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I would say he's more medium-ish, but he was so effective on the counter that you cannot think of him as a slow player. He is definitely not a slow player. So I would say that he's like medium high kind of thing. Maybe a 6 or 7 out of 10, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Then another question. If you could liken him to any other famous player, who would it be?
Oh, God. I mean, this might not be... It's the first one that comes to mind, but stylistic, and it's not exactly a great one to use because he hasn't been playing well for his new club, but when we had Enzo Fernandez, if anyone watched Enzo Fernandez in the World Cup and the way that he was playing, granted he was playing more centrally, they were similar in that they aren't guys who utilize their pace in order to be successful. They utilize that close control and their passing ability, etc. I'm always so bad, man. I always am so bad with these questions of comparing players. I know it's going to come to me like in an hour or something like that. I'm really, really bad at those. But how about we say Manuel Fernandes?
All right, that's good. Let's go with that. Then a few of my own questions I still had is, how are his set pieces? Is that something that he's good at?
Yeah, so I would say that he's definitely not bad. He's decent at delivering the ball, but the situation he was in at Benfica was that in the 22-23 season, we had Grimaldo taking a lot of the set pieces naturally. And then the next season, Di Maria arrives, so he starts taking a lot of the set pieces. So he would take them now and then. He was absolutely our penalty taker. He scored a lot of penalties for us. But when it comes to being the main guy for our free kicks or corner kicks or anything like that, often I would even see Rafa taking the corner kicks. I don't know if he's taking them for you guys as well.
He's taking them, yeah. And I didn't know he was actually decent at set pieces, so I was surprised at how good his corners and his free kicks were.
Yeah, his he ended up taking a lot of the corners, and João Mario as well, but they're okay. I also think that Benfica just has had issues with converting from corners. It feels like it's been ages, we go a long time without converting goals from free kicks and corner kicks. So he would take them now and then, but we had other guys that were our main set piece takers.
Yeah. So what would you describe, how would you describe him as a player? If you just have to say it in a couple of lines or a couple of words, how would you describe him from the top of your head?
He's a very intelligent winger who can be the playmaker within his team. He is press resistant due to his close control, and that also lends to being great in the counterattack.
Does he, when he plays on the wing, does he track back well? Does he join in team defense well?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, especially with the way that Roger Schmidt plays, he would always drop back into the sort of the left mid or the right mid of the 4-4-2 when we're out of possession. So yeah, he would definitely come back and help with that.
Okay. It's all the puzzle is starting to make sense to me suddenly, because I know Giovanni Van Bronckhorst has had a lot of say in the transfers this season, and the more I'm listening to how you're describing him, the more I'm like, okay. When going into this video, I was like, I don't know if it's the right fit. I mean, obviously, I was like, okay, I trust the decision because they've made a lot of really good decisions so far this window. But the more I'm hearing you talk about it, I'm like, okay, it's starting to make sense. The puzzle pieces are falling into place. I have a few more questions if you have time.
Yeah. I have a few more minutes for sure.
First and foremost, I think you already answered this one, but what can Beşiktaş fans expect from João Mario?
Well, definitely, if it's anything like his time at Benfica, he's someone who's always going to give a lot of effort and is going to be available. Hopefully, I don't want to jinx anything, but his injury record was very good at Benfica. So he never really struck me as sort of an injury-prone player, which is great. So he was always available and willing to play in any position quite clearly, which is an asset to the coach. Maybe you don't want to see that from him, but at least it speaks to his attitude, correct? So yeah, I think that he's a player that has a lot of creativity, and he'll be able to link up with Rafa as well, because they already have that sort of sense of working together from their time at Benfica together. They were really close friends as well. So I think that definitely influenced his decision to go to Beşiktaş, probably.
Yeah, I was going to ask that actually, because they played like 140 games together already, and I was just going to ask how their chemistry is, but I'm hearing that it's pretty good then.
It's pretty good, and I think what was interesting was that, as you probably know this already, Rafa was more of a winger previously in his career.
Yeah.
And only, I think, I could be wrong, Jorge Jesus may have played him centrally as well, but Roger Schmidt is where he really became that central player. And when you had him in the center and then Joo Mario on the right or the left sometimes, they really combined well together and made up for our lack of a killer striker at times. So they have this really good understanding. They're great at give and goes. The way that they combine around the box is excellent. So I'm interested. I'm gonna have to tune in and see how they do together.
For sure. Maybe I'll have to send you a shirt.
Hey, we'll see.
Well, let me know if you become a Beşiktaş fan. I definitely will. Well, let's see if I have any more questions. One of the questions was he's obviously a very versatile player, but you already answered that. So I think I know. I think I have asked most of the questions that I'm sure our listeners are interested in hearing. So he sounds like a pretty exciting player, honestly. I wasn't going into it with that idea, and I'm coming out of this interview with a very positive feeling, at least. Oh, one more question I actually have that I forgot about was, So you already kind of highlighted his strengths, but what would you say are his biggest weaknesses? What are his flaws?
One of the ones that comes to mind, and this is just because he was, I guess, kind of played out of his preferred position, is his sort of defensive awareness when he's playing centrally. And, I wouldn't expect him to be putting in tough tackles or anything like that. I mean, you have Jedson for that, right? Does Jedson play more defensive midfielder, ball winner?
Jedson is definitely our box-to-box. Like, he's all over the place. Okay. He covers every inch of grass. He's in our league, in the Super League, he's absolutely elite at ball winning, but he's also really, really good at ball carrying. He's very tough to get off the ball. He's pretty fast when he goes on one of his many runs. His only downside is that his vision and his passing isn't always the greatest. Although so far this season, he's been amazing. Like, he's scoring goals, he's giving assists. I think he's got 5 goal contributions already or something like that in 6 games. So he's been doing really well for us this season. And he was actually on the verge of leaving to Zenit. And I think it's Rafa's arrival that really changed that around. Like one of our board members actually said this like a week ago, that Rafa really has made Jedson want to stay. If that makes sense. Because he was getting a really big offer from Zenit St. Petersburg, like 4 million a year or something, which is nowhere close to what he makes at us. And he was very close to a move over there, but that move ended up not happening. And it's not like, usually when something like that happens, a player isn't happy, right? Like, they had their heart set on it, they want the money or whatever. And Jetson's like, he doesn't care. He's happy to stay because he feels very comfortable at the club now with Rafa's arrival. So,
and now he has another friend to hang out with, which is good. So. Yeah, just going back to his weaknesses, I would say that of all of the things, it would be, I mean, you're not going to expect him to have a great aerial ability, of course. You're not going to expect him to be that tough in the tackle because he is a winger, and his defensive awareness probably. But going forward, I think that sometimes his finishing has been frustrating, but it was clearly he had that one season where he was doing excellent in it. So I would say don't expect a ton of goals from him. More expect him to contribute to the build-up and maybe playing the final pass kind of thing.
Okay, thank you, Adrian, for all your insights on João Mario. And thank you for watching. Fingers crossed that he's going to replicate that form from the 2022-2023 season at Benfica. That could help us a long way getting towards our goals this season. Thanks again to Adrian Sousa from Rabona TV. Go and check his channel out. It's fantastic. It's one of the best football channels on YouTube. So definitely go and check that out. Bye-bye. See you next time.